with my sister Heather. You're listening to Haunted Family Podcast, a weekly podcast about the paranormal, unsolved mysteries, and even some true crime.
And this is most definitely an unsolved mystery.
Oh my god, this episode has literally given me a headache.
Not figuratively, literally.
Yes, like I have taken an Excedrin migraine and 3 ibuprofen and I still hurt. Kind of headache. I am about to break down and take prescription migraine medicine. The only thing holding me back is it makes me want to vomit. So, because I don't want to puke while recording, I'm powering through.
I will warn all of our listeners that, as of about 15 minutes before we sit down to record, I developed a very bad cough. So I might need to pause and take a cough break. 'Tis the season.
Okay, so let's just jump right in.
I think that's really all you can do with this topic is just...
Right there, yeah, there's no lead up. It is...
I don't think that we expected this topic to be migraine inducing when we decided to do this. It sounded fun.
Yeah, it did sound fun. And it may be fun for our listeners, but oh Lord, it was not fun for me.
And what we are talking about is the Voynich Manuscript, which is an ancient, sometime in the 1500s, 15th century, according to carbon dating, illustrated codex, which is written on
Parchment.
No, it's written on vellum, so it's written on calfskin, basically. It is bound in goat skin, but it was bound much later than it was written.
They're assuming that it was written probably 1404 to 1438. Somewhere in northern Italy.
Think. Because no...
It could be, picture it, yeah. Sicily.
I bet Sophia would know exactly who wrote this.
Okay, hold on just a second. I got so excited last night. In case you guys did not get the Golden Girls reference. Last night, Abby had a choral clinic at the university here in town. So basically it's 2 days of them working with a guest composer, a guest conductor, and they do 4 songs. They work them up over 2 days, and then the last night there is a concert. She omitted to me that her guest conductor was from St. Olaf. I got so excited. I wanted to ask her if she knew
Sophia wasn't from St. Olaf.
Abby said that
Rose was.
Oh, that's right. Rose. I wanted to ask her if she knew Rose Nyland. I was forbidden. It was sad. I cried a little inside. Okay, sorry. Back to the Voynich Manuscript. It has been studied by amateur cryptographers, by professionals, people in... I don't know, Britain who were code breakers. Pretty much everybody has had their hands on this manuscript who could possibly decipher it. And randomly, you see reports of, it's been decoded. Except, then they always come back and say, oh, never mind, that didn't make any sense.
It currently resides at the Voynich Rare Book Library.
We're probably saying that wrong.
I probably am.
Because I was thinking it was the Voynich.
Yeah, it could be it too. At Yale University.
Which we were there just last July. We'll have to post pictures of us in front of the Yale admissions building.
I really wish Abby was going to school there, but she has decided to stay in the state of Kentucky.
So sad. Not really sad. I mean, I would love an excuse to go to New England a couple times a year, but I am glad that she is only going to be an hour up the road, so I can visit her whenever I want.
So, there's a lot of speculation about what the book. Well,
Oh, I think we should add, if you have the privilege of going to Yale University and visiting this rare book library, you will not find it listed under Voynich Manuscript. It is actually MS 408.
Yeah.
Which makes it seem very, secretive.
Yeah, well, it only became known as the Voynich Manuscript in around 1912 when it was purchased by Wilfrid Voynich.
Right. And he won't really disclose where he got it or the circumstances leading up to him obtaining the copy of it. He says that he got it with a group of other books, and that this book looked like the ugly duckling of all of the books that he obtained. But there are people who think that he was being excessively secretive about it.
Yeah. The first reference
honestly,
to the
if
book,
somebody asked me where I got a book, I'd be like, fuck, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of weird books, a lot of old books, none like this. If I stumbled upon a book like this, I'd probably be very secretive about where I got it also. The first known reference of the book was around, well, late 1500s when it came into the possession of Emperor Rudolph II. He rather liked old and weird books and paid a fortune for it. About 600 gold ducats, which is
More than $2.
yeah, I think it's like $90,000 US current price. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it's a lot. So that right there would lead someone to believe, well, maybe people knowing that Rudolph liked oddities, maybe someone created this book out of whole cloth just to, swindle him out of some money.
Possible.
It's possible, but this book actually has, while it's not been able to be, deciphered, it is a language. It follows all the patterns of a language, including, word repetition. The most common word in a language will be spoken twice as often as the second most common word. Things like that.
And if people had a top list of our podcast, that word would be
It would be. It follows a pattern. There are distinguished chapters and...
Yeah, it's got lists and chapters and headings and labels and everything that you think that you would find in almost a textbook. Which was the first thing that popped into my head when I was looking at samples of it, is it almost reads as if it was a textbook.
Yes. The only thing in this book that is recognizable in sort of our way of thinking is the astrology section.
Right.
Weirdly enough. It features plants that have, to our knowledge, never existed.
But he could just be somebody who can't draw, because if I was to make illustrations of plants, it would probably look the exact same way.
I will say that kind of looking at how the words were arranged, it almost put me in the mind of um, someone with a learning disability.
Possibly.
But that could also be just, you know, the writing style of this language.
Right. That's true. Wouldn't that be funny if the creator of this book, and this missing language was dyslexic?
It would be. I know one. I listened to several podcasts today while doing laundry um, on the Voynich Manuscript, and one actually suggested that maybe it was a autistic monk who, after being locked in a you know library for so long, just translating books, just went a little bit crazy and started writing down whatever was in his head.
Well, that's possible. I had kind of a similar thought, not autistic monk, but I was thinking, like, I was thinking a kid.
I could see that.
Kind of like a journal of all things that interest them, because it's separated. There's an herb section.
His big book of everything.
Yeah, like a zodiac section. There's almost like an anatomy section. So to me, my very first thought was Abby's big book of everything, and how she carried it around with her everywhere because she watched that TV show Stanley like constantly, and he had the great big book of everything, and she wanted one too.
And I made her one, yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually kind of what I was thinking. Except if you look up pages of this, the handwriting is beautiful. It is almost calligraphy like.
Yeah, definitely not what I would think of as a child's writing.
But then again, I think people used to put an emphasis on handwriting, and that they don't anymore.
Yeah.
So who knows? It could have been.
Um, I know a lot of people have dismissed this as just a lost language because the probability of this being the only document that remain in existence from a lost language. But I kind of feel that it's more plausible than most suggestions, just because here in North America they estimate that we have lost 103 languages, and I know that has to be more because there was a lot of different Native American tribes that have went completely extinct.
Right.
The last North American language that went extinct was the Wichita language, and the last surviving speaker died in 2016, so last year. There are several people who are trying to revive that, but reviving a language is hard.
Right. I mean, it's not uncommon that there really wouldn't be any books or anything else written, because that's a long time ago, and it's not like people cared anything about archival quality
and
preservation.
And that's also a long time in history for things to have gotten lost.
Right.
You're talking about invasions and lands changing hands. It's hard to preserve cultural integrity when that's going on.
Natural catastrophes.
Exactly. Right now, at our current pace, we are losing one language every 2 weeks. And they estimate that by 2015, 90% of all of the current languages being spoken will be lost.
Wow.
There will be no more fluent native speakers. That's kind of mind-blowing.
That is, I didn't even realize that there was that many different languages.
Yeah. It kind of It annoys me when people say, "Oh, well, what's that in Native American?" Because there is no one Native American language.
Right. I remember when you taught the girls how to sing the Itsy Bitsy Spider in Lakota.
I bet they still remember it too.
Probably. All I remember is that something sounds like itchy.
Iktomi.
Yeah. Itchy, Tommy.
Um,
All of our South Dakota listeners are like, we hate her.
she's got too much going on to learn another language. She will just sit there and occasionally help me with French.
You guys are really lucky that I remember as much French as I do.
I almost called you because the quilt we're currently working on has several blocks that are written in French. I knew one said "I love you," but another one, I don't know what it said, but it had a picture of a pear with it, so I'm guessing it had something to do with a pear.
Maybe. I took 2 years in high school,
Okay,
2 years in college.
A friend just asked what we're recording tonight, and I sent him a Wikipedia link to the Voynich Manuscript. He said, "Oh, that old thing? That's just my old handwriting in a composition notebook."
You know, I mean, that would be so funny if that's what that is. It is, if what we are looking at and what people are scratching their heads and putting,
What is so
all of
perplexing.
this, right, just turns out to be some kid's journal or some kid's science textbook. I mean, that would crack me up so much. You just don't even know how hysterical I would find that.
Well, I mean, and some of the context, because they can make out that some of it is botany and some of it is like recipes, would make sense
Right,
that
but
it would be.
the recipes they believe are like chemical medicinal equations.
Yeah, so it would make sense that it would be someone's science book.
Yeah, that's totally what I think. Is that it's probably something so simple, and everybody has made it into something mysterious and a big deal, and it's, I mean, it's probably like, you know, 5th grade homework or something.
Well, there are some that believe that the whole Voynich manuscript is the work of a man named Roger Bacon. You've probably never heard of him, but I would bet that Abby has heard of him, and I'm pretty sure that Mike has heard of him.
Okay.
He did a lot of like medieval groundwork for science. Did a lot of work with alchemy. I totally lost my train of thought there. He was one of the major influences behind setting a scientific method. And, formulating a periodic table. He didn't do it, but he was one of the people who laid the groundwork for these later scientific notions. So, I mean, it is possible that it was his or somebody under him. But why write it in code?
Well, doctors have used Latin for, centuries and ages and, 100 moons. What's to say that he didn't think that that he thought that he was doing something similar using a dead language like Latin?
That is possible.
Only it was, random dead language that we don't know where it came from.
So, I mean, this book is not hard to find. You can find pictures of the pages, almost all the pages, online. They do believe that there are several pages missing.
Right, because pages are numbered or marked as if they were numbered. It is estimated that the manuscript could have that it could have been written in a short period of time, like just a couple of months. But then other people think that it was like a long, drawn out work in progress. But I'm not really for sure why they think that. I think they're basing it on some other encyclopedic manuscript that was written, and it took like 30 years to complete. So it could have taken a month, and it could have taken 30 years.
Yet another mystery.
I know. It's kind of like when Abby was a baby and her pediatrician said, I predict that her height is going to be somewhere between your height and your husband's. And I was like, well, thank you. Did you go to med school to tell me that my child is either going to be 4'10" or 6 feet tall? Because that's a really good guess right there.
She nailed that, didn't she?
She did. Abby clocks in at 4'11". You know, the bad thing about doing an episode on an unsolved mystery is that there's no conclusion because it's an unsolved mystery.
I mean, I would love to be able to tell our listeners, hey, we've solved this. We know exactly what is in the Voynich Manuscript. But we don't. And we probably never will. I kind of hope that we never figure out what the Voynich Manuscript really was and are able to translate it, because then the mystery's dead.
Right. But you know, unlike the last unsolved mystery we did, like, I really want it solved. But this one, I'm kind of like, what does it hurt?
So there's some stranger ideas about what the Voynich Manuscript may have been. And it harkens back to a previous episode.
Aliens?
We've not done aliens yet.
Oh. Well, okay. But I think that...
Mandela effect.
Oh.
There are many believe that this is slipped over from either another universe or it's residue from when our universe has changed.
Okay.
Kind of like oh, Holly, I'm missing what was that man that showed up at the airport? We talked about him in the last episode, in one of our episodes.
Yeah, we talked about him in the time traveling episode, but I don't remember his name, where he came from that country that didn't exist, but he had all documentation.
I wish I had a better memory than I do.
Same.
So, I mean
true.
that's a possibility.
I do believe in Mandela
if you believe in Mandela,
but
that's possible.
I can't help but think that there's something... like, this has a simple reason, and it's just been so long that we just don't know it. I mean, I just don't see putting in that level of time and commitment to hand. I mean, in today's world, if you were doing it on the computer or with Photoshop, possibly, but the level of time and commitment, I just can't see that.
Why literally create another language? This is a language in this document.
Well, didn't Tolkien?
But he was different. I mean, he was writing it for a series of books. He wasn't writing it to hoax people.
Right. I mean, everybody knew that it was...
Wait, hold on. Are you telling me that it's not a real language?
Sorry, but that's not a real language.
I'm going to cry.
No. And Bilbo is not real.
But me, Bilbo, and Frodo share a birthday, so they have to be real because we share a birthday. And second breakfast is real because me and Abby celebrate second breakfast.
Okay, so what are some other thoughts on this? Because truthfully, I got nothing.
Okay, there are several. There are some things that lead people to believe that it was Roger Bacon. I almost said Kevin Bacon.
6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yes, that it was Roger Bacon that wrote it. Many believe that John Dee, the mathematician in the 1500s, was actually the one who sold the manuscript to Rudolph II.
Which is possible.
Dee was the official mathematician and astrologer for the court of Queen Elizabeth I.
Wow.
And Queen Elizabeth had a huge number of manuscripts and documents written by Bacon. Yeah, and Dee was a scryer for a medium for the Queen. Sorry, no. He lived with the Queen's official spirit medium. Sometimes it's hard to read my notes. So some speculate that it might be that the whole manuscript might be a form of automatic writing, where you go into a trance state and you write whatever comes into your mind or whatever the spirits tell you to write.
That sounds a lot like 6th grade writing class, where we're supposed to just sit quietly for so long and then just write a bunch of words that pop into our head, and literally like nothing would ever pop into my head.
I love writing. I really do. I hated every one of those. Actually, honestly, I hated all of the whole writing prompt thing that we did in grade school. College professors, when I got to college professors said that their students from Kentucky were some of the dumbest students they had ever had. And they credited it. And I went to a Kentucky university, not University of Kentucky, but a school here in Kentucky. And they said they firmly believe that the problem with Kentucky students is Kara. I don't know. I really believe, I don't believe in the automatic writing. I kind of believe that this was a scientific document that someone just decided to code in a dead language that they knew. And, while we can say, there's such and such number of dead languages, we don't know all of them. And there's really no way for us to know every single language that has ever been spoken or written and then died. It's kind of like, we can tell you approximately how many animals have went extinct, but that's just the animals that we knew about in advance. Or have some evidence that they existed. There are things that have existed that we just don't have documentation of. We don't. And I think everybody has, there's official abbreviations, but everybody sort of has their own personal abbreviations. People could read my notes for this podcast, and I know a lot of podcasters put their show notes up on the internet for their readers. You will never find Holly and I putting our show notes up, because we would have to have somebody come in and rewrite them for us, because you couldn't understand a single thing I've got on this page right now, except for maybe the title, which is written out perfect. I don't know. I do find this to be a very interesting manuscript. I've looked at most of the pages that I found online. Okay, I found 2 more things of interest.
Okay.
So we mentioned John Dee, the mathematician, a few minutes ago when talking about how the book possibly came into the hands of Rudolph II. But the Voynich Manuscript is not the only weird document that John Dee has had his hands on.
Really? The Necronomicon?
No, surprisingly not.
For those of you who do not know, that is the Book of the Dead from the movie Evil Dead.
At one time, he had the largest library in London. And his favorite book in the library was called the Book of Soiga.
Okay, what's that?
Well, it is a book filled with magical incantations.
Oh. So like a spell book.
Yes, but it was written in code that he was never able to decipher.
So how do we know it was a spell book?
Because he had a conversation with, of all people, the angel Uriel,
Mm-hmm.
who told him that he did not have the necessary clearance to give him the cipher for the book, that only the Archangel Michael knew the secret. But he died before he was ever able to make contact with the Archangel Michael. And the book was actually lost for about 500 years before it was found. There's 2 copies known to exist. One is in the British Library and one is in Oxford's library.
That's kind of sad.
And to this day, it has never been translated into a language. Yeah, to this day, it's never been translated into a language that we can read.
Where's Archangel Michael when you need him?
Oh, probably helping out those boys from Supernatural.
Damn it. Or eating cookies like, what was that show? Or not show, but there was a movie where Michael was played by John Travolta.
The Voynich Manuscript and the Book of Soiga is not the only 2 uncrackable codes as far as ancient books go. There's a book called and I'm listeners, you know I butcher words. I don't mean to. I just can't pronounce things properly. The book is known as the Rohank Codex. And while with the Voynich Manuscript, we kind of know that it's from Europe, probably Italy, we have no idea where this book came from. None.
So they weren't able to carbon date it or like cross-reference fibers and ink and all that good stuff?
In the 19th century, it was donated to the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. And that's it. That's all we know. It has a huge alphabet. Most alphabets are between 20 and 40 characters. This has over 200. It's 448 pages long, and no one can even narrow it down to a geographic location.
Wow.
Yeah. Initially, when scholars couldn't crack it, they dismissed it as just a pure hoax. But in recent years, they've been leading more and more credence to that it might be a legitimate document.
I wonder why they're not able to determine where it came from, though. I mean, I kind of thought that was easy-ish.
I don't know. I mean, to me, I'm looking at it, and it almost has a middle to far east look to the characters and some of the drawings. But it's not in any decipherable language from those areas. So is the Voynich is this like the Voynich Manuscript? Did it just bleed over from another time period? Not another time period. Why do I keep saying that? Bleed over from another universe?
Yeah.
Probably not. I don't know, but that's a fun theory to kick around. I don't know. I believe that these, when we come across these unbreakable codes, that it's not so much as unbreakable as we just need to
Stop dismissing things we don't understand.
I don't know. I was thinking that we just need to find our Rosetta Stone for these languages.
Yeah.
We need to find the key that unlocks the door to these languages. Because we've got, if by 2050, 90% of the languages spoken now will be lost. Imagine a couple hundred years ago. 1,000
Right.
years ago.
When nothing was really preserved.
Yes. And you did have, I know we've had a lot of wars lately, but, you had populations and villages and towns and communities getting completely wiped out over the course of empire building then.
Right.
So I think it would have been very easy for the languages that spurred these documents to have just been crushed under the wheel of advancement.
Yeah. I agree.
So there was a couple of really good stupid criminals this week from my area.
Because we love stupid criminals that come from our area.
Yes, but I think I want to go with a man from Mexico.
Okay.
Mr. Gerardo Canuto, who found himself intoxicated and
I hate when I find myself intoxicated.
armed with a BB gun and in someone's barn that he did not have permission to be in.
Oh, good times.
Yeah. Homeowners came home and found him in their barn. And he was intent on robbing the place, of course. Because that's what people do when they're in private barns that they shouldn't be in. So the homeowner pulled out their gun and held him while the cops showed up. And all of this was captured on video because people in my area don't mess around, and a lot of people I know have security cameras inside their barns.
Right. See, Kentucky, we always joke that the number one cash crop is pot. But, we're still a agriculture, at least in eastern Kentucky. People still grow tobacco. They, I think some people have switched over to maybe some soy. But, for the most part, there are people who that's their livelihood is what they grow and store it in their barn until it's time to sell. And they're not going to take being robbed of everything lightly.
Yeah. The man claims that he just had a fight with his family and had wandered off to find a warm place to sleep for the night. And he thought that their barn was an abandoned cabin. Their barn looks nothing like an abandoned cabin. Their farm looks nothing like an abandoned barn. And inside the backpack that he carried with him was ropes, a rather large flashlight, and gloves.
Which to me says, I'm about to do something bad.
Yeah. That's what it seems like to me too. But thankfully, these homeowners was armed, and they were able to protect themselves until law enforcement made the trip out because they live a fairly good distance from town.
Yeah, and I've been seeing this on Facebook all week long because I am apparently friends with their family.
Yeah, I have some mutual friends with them too. So, but that's what you get in a small town.
Yeah.
Very glad that they did not lose anything.
Yeah, me too. And I mean, the guy's very lucky because had that been me, I would not have held him. I would have shot first, asked questions later. So, yeah, if you want to be a criminal, don't get caught breaking into people's houses.
At least not in my area, because there's a more than likely you will be met with the business end of their gun.
Right.
We've experienced a lot of drug issues in this area over the past 10 to 15 years, and it has really made most people hyper vigilant about protecting what is theirs.
Yeah. And they don't, they're not messing around about it.
Well, I think today was a really good episode. I wish that we had had more information for our listeners, but we only had what scholars have gave us to work with, and
that's what you get with Unsolved Mysteries.
That's what you get.
Yeah.
But maybe in a few years we'll do an updated episode where we talk about, hey, this is what the Voynich Manuscript really talks about, and it's boring.
Yeah.
I really do believe it is a science book.
Yeah, I do not think that it is anything grand and earth-shattering that's going to open worlds of knowledge for us or anything.
No, I think it will probably be discovered, if it is ever translated, to be a very boring educational book.
Not that educational books are boring,
but they can be. I mean, come on, we have all sat through a boring class with a boring book.
Actually, I took this class one time, oddly enough, cultural anthropology, because I thought it sounded really interesting, and we were talking about a lot of dead languages and not non-existent, but cultures that have died off. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. No. Most boring class ever.
My cultural anthropology class was amazing.
Oh, mine was terrible.
I had a relatively young professor who spent every school break in South America living with various indigenous tribes.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so he had a lot of first-hand information about actually working in the field. And that's a lot better than a professor who was just going to stand up there and read to you other people's findings. Well, we have a great episode for next week.
We do.
It's actually it kind of hits a little close to home for us.
Right.
Because
we were at a similar event where the girl went missing. So next week is true crime, and it's an interesting one, and it is solved, so there's no being left bored, not bored, but unfulfilled at the end.
Yeah, but before this was solved, Holly and I would have in-depth conversations about this for hours, and this was years before we decided to do a podcast.
Oh, so, yeah, this was
2009.
Yeah. We didn't even know what. I didn't even have a blog then. It was. We were. We were not socially connected, except I think we might have had MySpace. Possibly. Nope. We had to have had Facebook because every once in a while that notification pops up on my Facebook. So we must have been new to it.
Yeah.
And our listeners are very confused, just the way we like it. Okay, well, as always, if you've got a stupid criminal, send us an email at hauntedfamilypodcast@gmail.com. If you have a story that you would like for us to cover, either an unsolved mystery, true crime, or something paranormal, we are always happy to take anything listener related into consideration. And we're currently working on our schedule for next year, so now is the perfect time to get it in. We'll probably sit down at Thanksgiving to kind of iron out at least the first 6 months of next year. Probably the whole year, though, because that's just how we roll. And if you would like to have a podcast of your own, please consider Podbean, because, Podbean is awesome. We love it. I wish that we had started with Podbean instead of our, original podcast host site, just because Podbean makes it super easy. They make integration to YouTube easy. They make posting to social media a breeze. It makes just uploading super easy. Everything about podcast is all about the ease of use for the podcaster.
We are not tech savvy at all. So having a host site that is going to be easy to integrate was essential to us.
Yeah.
And I feel like I say that every episode, but I am not joking. We are not tech savvy individuals.
No, not at all. If you knew the issues that we went through to get up and running on our original host site, oh my, it was a nightmare. That's why if you try to go back and listen to some original beginning episodes of ours, one, it's craptastic, and two, there's some episodes missing. That's because they were so bad, and getting them up and within the constrained time frame allowed was not fun.
Yeah. We made the decision to switch after our Kurt Cobain episode, which we had recorded, and it was within the parameters of how long we were allowed for an episode, and they still split it up on us.
Oh, it was awful.
Which, Holly and I do not like things that do not go down as we plan it. So the fact that we followed all the rules and it still was split up, that was the final straw for us. So yeah. We switched to Podbean and we have never been happier.
Oh, yeah. Podbean is absolutely the way to go if you want to have a podcast. And if you use our affiliate code, Haunted Family PB, we get a very, very, very small percentage back, and it just helps us with our hosting fees, and it goes into helping us get new and better equipment. Which, fingers crossed, middle of January, I should be in a non-noisy studio-ish.
I will still be recording in my bedroom.
Oh, well, I will probably be recording in my bedroom. It's just I will not be on... Actually, I will still be on, hopefully, the main... I'll still be where I'm at. I'll just be farther away from the road. So, it won't be as noisy.
Yeah.
Because I will be able to see the road that I live on right now from my living room. So, and it's only not even a mile up the road.
Yeah.
So moving's going to be fun.
You promised me you was never going to move again.
I know. This may be the last move.
I hope so.
Until I move to Rhode Island or New Hampshire or New Haven.
You're on your own then.
Or Mystic. Am I on my own if I move to Mystic?
No, I'm not moving with you.
Okay.
Okay, well. Thanks for listening.
Yep. As always, we love our listeners, and we would still have a podcast without you, but it would be very awkward because it would just be two sisters yelling at each other over Skype, and that's not as much fun as you think it is.
Yeah. So, thanks for being part of our craziness.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week with a super, super fun, murdery episode.
If murder can be fun.
It's not fun for the person who got murdered.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.